Good morning, security gang, and welcome back to the CyberHub Podcast. My name is James Azar. I'm host, Chief Information Security Officer. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. This is Wednesday's episode, January 21st, 2026. A busy and packed show for all of y'all today. So we're going to get right into it. For those tuning in, this show is 15 minutes long. It's going to give you the latest cybersecurity headlines that matter for a practitioner and why. I'm looking at this specifically as a cybersecurity practitioner and a CISO. So please make sure to subscribe, follow, share, like, and comment. We've got a lot of content on cyberhubpodcast.com as well as our YouTube page. So go check it out there. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be reviewing on today's show. A McDonald's India affiliate gets hit by the Everest Ransomware gang. The EU is moving to phase out high-risk telecom suppliers. Attackers target Afghans who worked with the West. Australia questions Chinese electric buses running a city fleet. Then we're going to hit North Korea's latest targeting, a Google Gemini calendar invite data theft trick, newly disclosed Anthropic MCP Git server flaws, 2 reports showing ransomware and supply chain attacks hitting record highs in 2025, and a Supreme Court case that could reshape geofencing data. There's not other important stuff the Supreme Court's hearing now by any sorts of stretch of our imaginations. So all of that on today's show to power us through the 15-minute podcast today and show and comment and like and let us know what you think. Look, I think we have some of the best audience members on the planet, gang. And so comment, let us know. Your comments are always so insightful. They power us through. I've got my double espresso this morning and look how beautiful that is. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Perfect. Lavazza mid roast, just absolutely spectacular. Let's get going into our news stories this morning because there's a lot to talk about. All right, let's kick off with this Everest ransomware hitting India, in McDonald's affiliate in India. This is a major cyber attack that exfiltrated allegedly 861 gigabytes of data. The Everest gang claimed it breached systems tied to McDonald's India's, that's the WNS franchise and operations, exfiltrated data. Like I said, 861 gigabytes worth is what they're saying, and is using double extortion tactics, disrupting, kind of points of sale, HR and financial data, as well as third-party delivery integrations. One of the risks I found with this one is specifically around fraud and extortion using some of that stolen HR and finance files, especially around payroll, vendor banking, and so much more. Plus, you can imagine the downstream point of sale service interruptions that are affecting actual being able to serve customers. And again, this kind of goes into why you really do have to focus on segregating your existing kind of customer-facing technology from your back office technology and then segmenting it across. Segmentation and microsegmentation are not buzzwords. They're actually healthy ways to look at how you separate your business. And then that's how you limit your kind of like east-west type of attack. And this type of attack had a lot of east-west movement, which likely leads to why they're getting double extorted. See, threat actors, when they're double extorting, they're very, very confident in what they did leading up to that. And once they're very comfortable with it, understand they feel like they've broken as many walls as they possibly can, meaning their dwell time likely wasn't 15, 20 minutes or even a day or two. It could have been weeks or months, is one of those as well. To mitigate something like this, folks, you should stage and test clean room rebuilds of your points of sale and back office images so you can actually re-provision stores rapidly without trusting any potentially tainted gold masters. Now, another thing you should do with points of sale, if you're in retail and your points of sale get hit because you didn't segment them, like the case here with McDonald's India, your backup point of sale should be something your managers have and are able to download through your company portal to actually take payment via card. And cash is always king, and you can always do that directly on the devices. In the world of today, when your point of sale goes out, and if business stops, that's a lack of any sort of resiliency planning on behalf of the IT and technology team, as well as the security team and operations team. Your backup should always be in your company portal. You should have a backup payment method. You should have another way to do it where You automatically deploy that to all of your folks so they can keep doing what they're doing at the point of sale without impacting your customers. That's not the case that's happened here. Again, so that's something to keep in mind. Everest has been behind a bunch of these. So McDonald's hasn't yet confirmed this. The company does operate in India through two business entities, one for the north and east part of India and other for the west and south part of India. They've been around there since 1996. So quite the deal there. All right. We'll move to the EU on Tuesday that they plan to phase out high-risk telecom suppliers. This is widely looked at as them essentially starting to target Huawei and ZTE out of the EU telecom systems. Brussels is proposing a structured drawdown of certain 5G and core network vendors across member states, pushing diversification and domestic ally kits. The timelines and carve-outs will vary, but operators will have to replace or even ring-fence gears. The key risk here is costly swap outs, service churn during cutovers, and even supply gaps for maintenance parts, as well as you kind of built your entire, look, Europe, good morning. Hi, my name's James. I've been doing this show now for 7 years, before it was popular, before podcasting was very popular, right? According to Spotify and Apple, I'm in the 8th percentile of podcasts, meaning in terms of content production over time and episodes. So I'm not saying that to say anything, but I've got a track record. I've been saying it for years. You're letting China into your environment. You're paying China to do it, and now you're going to rip him out. You're not getting anything for it. You've wasted your taxpayer money on boneheaded moves everyone saw coming but you. Or you saw it coming and you ignored it because China was lining your pockets. And now you're kind of understanding what they meant. You're either naive, stupid, or a little bit of both. Either way, what we're seeing here specifically is the EU now having to switch their 5G networks after they've deployed them, after they've got the Chinese backbone inside. And now they're looking at how they're going to domesticate them. Good luck. I'm glad you're doing it. But you're waking up really late to the party. I mean, it's almost last call. I hope you get it done, but it's almost last call for this one. You know, when you look at mitigating something like this, by the way, you've got to build a multi-year replacement roadmap. Early on in my career, I worked for Verizon Wireless. And anytime we tried to do anything in the network, man, it was roadmap and project managed to the T, right? You can't this isn't something you can do on a Tuesday afternoon. This is a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar type of phase out that they're going to have to do with equipment they can't do anything with, but potentially try to resell it to China for 10 cents to the dollar. And China knows they have nothing to do with it. If China's even inclined to buy it, if they want to sell it to China. Otherwise, they're just recycling it. That's the best they could do. And that's a damn shame. Welcome to the party, EU. Either way, welcome to the party. There's a campaign targeting Afghans who worked with Western forces before the shameful withdrawal and then handing the country back to the Neanderthal Talibans. Threat actors are phishing and even social engineering some Afghans that are tied to coalition work, seeking location, contacts, and even immigration details. The lures are including visa processing, aid disbursement, and even job offers. Again, this is safety and doxing of individuals and their families. The compromise of NGO and government case files is likely how they're doing all of this. If you're in a program where you're supporting these Afghans who were allies to the United States and Western forces during our time in Afghanistan, you want to support at-risk persons by moving sensitive comms to a single verified channel like Signal with safety numbers verified in person, or publish a "we will only contact you via X" policy to these folks to make sure they don't fall victim for these attackers that are likely looking to identify where they are, where their families are, and try to exert more and more damage from them. We'll go back to China here, folks, where Canberra's Chinese electric bus fleet is under security scrutiny after, guess what? Guess what Chinese put on their electric buses that they're selling to the Australian. Also, Australia, good morning. Welcome to the party. or I should say, good evening, mates. Welcome. Local officials and experts are questioning the telemetry, remote diagnostics, and even update pathway in Chinese-made e-buses that are being used in public transport. The concern, data exfiltration, and the possibility of remote disablement. Yep, actual kill switch. Why are you wondering about this? Because it's an operational disruption of transit, safety, and availability, as well as movement pattern data exposure for the public, something you don't know that you don't want the Chinese necessarily having. So imagine Australia ticks off the Chinese, and the Chinese say, we're killing all of your e-buses that you bought from us. Now the public's outraged because, one, you elected morons who bought Chinese e-buses without really doing due diligence on them. So that's number one. But then the public wants blood. And the same people they elected are the people they're going to hold responsible, which duly they should be doing. Should elect better people in general, because they're obviously not reading the roadmap. Or if they are, they're ignoring it. Right? We've kind of developed this, one of the things we've developed is this idea that if we buy cheap, it's all right. It'll be okay. There's always a price. If it's cheap, there's there. Look, if you're living in this world and you need to look at mitigating this, require independent firmware and telematics pen test with escrow source and keys and gate OTA updates through a city-controlled signing service so you can actually see what's going in and out of that. I would even encourage encrypting all the data leaving the bus, all the telemetry data, like encrypting it with a different algorithm. Don't use public-private keys like type of symmetric type of encryption, and just send them on a fishing spree there for the Chinese. North Korean linked threat actors are ramping up targeting of specific companies here. The DPRK operators continue credential theft and social engineering attacks aimed at researchers, diplomats, and even crypto and fintech staff, often as lures on professional networks like LinkedIn and developer communities like GitHub and GitLab. The key risks here are account takeovers for long dwell time espionage and even crypto theft. To mitigate these types of threat from the North Korean, enforce continuous risk-based session verification, like re-authenticate on risky actions like exporting data or creating new wallet addresses. That'll help mitigate some of that threat. It won't eliminate it, but 8 out of 10 is better than 0 out of 10 in those types of cases. A weaponized invite coming from Google Gemini plus a new calendar trick. This is something Migo has been reporting on. We talked about it briefly yesterday on the show. Today we took deep dive into what Migo's highlighting there, and as well as we've internally, and as my role as a CISO, have spoken to one of our partners around making sure we mitigate against these types of attacks. So attackers are crafting meeting invites on content that, when summarized or acted on by an AI assistant, can leak context or even trigger unintended actions. That's the prompt injection that we talked about yesterday, but now we know it's coming out of calendars. So the silent exfiltration of meeting notes, attachments, or even follow-on actions performed by an agent. To mitigate this, disable agent actions on untrusted calendar sources, and you should always require human approval for any outbound action of an AI assistant, at least for the time being, until you feel comfortable going with that. Staying on the AI train here, 3 flaws identified in the Anthropic MCP Git server that are being actively disclosed here, folks. The newly documented weaknesses in the MCP Git server flow could enable unauthenticated repo access or even leakage of exposed or misconfigured in-agent workflows. One of the risks here would be model or agent assistant access to private code, which could lead to even secret or key exposure. Mitigating this one is very simple. Pin your MCP Git to read-only service accounts with repo level allow list. Rotate any token that were accessible to agents. That'll help mitigate this little flaw coming from Anthropic. And these are 3 different CVEs: 2025 68143, 68144, and 68145, if you're looking for that information. We'll move to 2 reports coming from Cyber here. Let's get into it. One around ransomware, one around software supply chain. Let's talk about ransomware and supply chain attacks that are coming here with setting records for 2025, both in volume and trend. Cyber tracking 6,604 ransomware attacks in 2025. That's up 52% from 2024's 4,346 different claims. December closed with 731 attacks, second only to February's all-time monthly high. The convergence here is supply chain compromises climbing in lockstep, logging 38 supply chain attacks in November alone, near a monthly record. This is underscoring how the ransomware plus supply chain feedback loop fuels one the other. From a sector spread, though, pressure is broad across government, healthcare, energy, finance, and even suppliers. Heavy industrial took persistent hits. We talked about Jaguar Land Rover and so many others. Cybel's roll-up shows a multi-sector escalation. Some of these victims, some of these operators, even as some victims' payments dropped in 2024, attacks counts continue rising. Crews compensated with higher volume and noisier, higher disruption targets to force leverage with law enforcement pressure, didn't really reduce attempts. Some of my key takeaways from this one is treat third-party code and update path as your edge. When volumes rise and payments fall, actors lean harder on upstream leverage, meaning one poison component, many victims, as we saw last year. And you should can this update promote without any sort of provenance and build a gate, not a guideline. In their second report here, we talk about the threat landscape report coming from these guys. And again, this one is a good one for 2025. Supply chain, again, dominant threat. We talked about in the first report, this second report really highlighting how ransomware was the most destabilizing category in 2025, with activity expanding across critical verticals. Many crews shifted to data theft and extortion only rather than encryption as being the primary. Encryption became optional in 2025. And they did that in order to speed monetization. The access economics, the underground market for initial access brokers stayed hot. Thousands of brokered footholds, fueling rapid hands-off from Fish to InfoStealer to these extortion crews that operate in a decentralized fashion. 7 straight months of increases into late 2025 signal operator consistency and automation are not one-off spikes, but rather new techniques. Some of those techniques highlight supply chain compromises like malicious NPM, PIPI packages, CI/CD tampering, as well as developer tool abuse like VS Code, workspaces, and extensions, and edge service abuse like your CDN, WAF, and IDP missteps are the fastest routes to many victims at once. This is being reflected across a lot of different snapshots. One key takeaway for me from all of these reports is prioritize pre-production provenance, your SLSAs, your 6 stores, your attestation, and developer workstation hardening, extension allow list, workspace setting blocks. Those 2 controls directly blunt the top routes that these reports say are surging. And one thing to keep in mind here, 2025 wasn't more of the same to me. It was more of everything. Ransomware scaled, supply chain rode shotgun, and DevTools became the new edge just when we thought we had that under control. If your build system can promote artifact without proof of origin, that's not a CI/CD. That's a public API for extortion. Keep that in mind. All right. And we'll get to our final story here of the day. The U.S. Supreme Court is weighing in on this geofence constitutionality here. This is going to be heard on Friday. The court reported that they're going to hear this case on Friday. The court's ruling on the geofence warrants could redefine how location data is requested, stored, and even admitted, affecting incident and fraud investigations. One of the risks here is evidence suppression and even higher threshold for historical location queries. So you want to, if you're in this game at all, you should revise legal hold and warrant playbooks now. Ensure location queries meet stricter, particularly standards and retention limits, because this one looks like the Supreme Court may edge that one way here just based on the current build of the Supreme Court. All right. That's it for our show this morning. Sorry we went a little bit over, but a lot to talk about and not a lot of breaches, but a lot of information for y'all to dissect. If you had a hard time doing it, go to cyberhubpodcast.com. Sign up now for your email. We don't sell anyone's email. We don't sell that to anyone at all. As you see, we don't even have active advertisers on the show because we're very, very focused on content, not on trying to sell you anything. You'll get a written summary of this directly in your inbox. It comes out every day shortly after the podcast ends. So a lot of times this is a lot of information. You can take it all in by going to cyberhubpodcast.com, signing up to our CyberHub Podcast newsletter. You'll get a written summary of every show Monday through Thursday, and then the weekly summary on Friday that'll include everything. So go and do that right now. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. Please make sure to tune in again. Subscribe, share, like, comment, and follow. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern with more. Until then, thank you all for tuning in and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.